Hello, I'm Herm Gailey. We're here on a raw mid-December day in the rural township, North Hopewell Township in Pennsylvania, south central PA. And we're at the point of the year where we're stealing rides before things really close down for the winter. I usually manage to keep something going over the winter, but it gets tougher. So, you know, you want to have one that's prepared to ride out through these frozen hills, but I've sure ridden a bunch of them out there in the wintertime. So I'll have something up all winter and keep my fingers crossed that they keep on their feet and that we can get something done out there in the country, because this will freeze up by and by. So what we're going to work on this morning is transitions again. I know we've worked on transitions before, but these are transitions within the same gait transitions. Basically, it's more than just changing your speed. It's bringing your horse back to more of a level of engagement, pushing your horse out in front of you a little more. It does change your speed, but it also should change your stride. Now, this is a little smaller horse who doesn't have the reach that some horses do, although I think you'll find that she's not near as pony gaited as you'd expect one who's only about 14.5 to be. She can extend reasonably well. She comes back and collects, which a lot of smaller horses can do pretty well. But she's got more scope than maybe you might expect from a little one. Where this really helps you is to get your horse to where you can control their cadence and their speed, and they don't resent it, and they'll come back to you when you relax your hands and your seat and just sort of bring them back to you, as opposed to always wanting to either lag behind or push forward. So what I'll do initially, now she's just barely been warmed up this morning, but I'll just put her on sort of a medium trot. And I'll confess that even though my saddle has a horn, I'm not much of a fan of the jog. I have along like they're going somewhere, and it's been decades since I showed in anything that required a jog. So while it's worthwhile to be able to do that if you choose to, it's not a gait that I find particularly useful. So she's just trotting around, kind of getting relaxed, getting warmed up a little bit. I trotted a few circles, as you can see, from the ground here before we started the video, but she's pretty fresh. So you're on this little trot. See how she's got her nose out a little bit? So I'm just going to push her up in the bridle. I'm going to set my hands, push her up there with my legs, and if she continues to push through that, then I'll bring her back and back her up and some of the push out of her. There you can see that she realized she was a little wrong pushing through like she was, and she's more secure. Pushing through a little, I'll squeeze a little, drive her forward, hold my hand steady. And I can relax her then too. I'm not just going to hold her in a straitjacket with my hands. So what I'll do from here is I'll maybe go up the pen away, come across at least a partial diagonal, and extend her trot a bit. When I get back to the corner of the pen, I'll relax my seat and bring her back. So I'm going to drive her, get her reaching a bit, and then relax. And see how she comes back. That's your transition within the gait. That gives you speed control, but it's not just a matter of having them hollow out and slow down. It's a matter of having them engage, get more collected perhaps, and shorten their stride. So I'll go across this diagonal and I'll ask her to trot again. And I'll relax my seat. And for a little pony, she kind of stretches out fairly decently. Relax my seat again. This time I'm going to bring her the whole way down to a halt. So that's a transition within the gait. And you can see, if all you were doing was going trail riding, if that was your goal, and I have horses that primarily do just go out across country, that's very nice to be able to frame your horse up, drive them forward and cover some ground. But still, if you need to be in touch with their mouth so that you can keep them more secure, depending on the terrain, depending on any distractions or anything they might spook at, and then bring them back as opposed to having to wrestle them down. So a while back we had a request for, actually from my friend Alita Seifert, for some information on softening a horse up at various gaits for trail riding. Well, these transitions within the same gait and the transitions that were on our previous transitions, our training video, are really helpful for getting your trail horse lined out, framed up, and softened. But one thing about trail horses is, all too often people only trot them a certain amount. If you have a pen or a big pasture where you can work on really trotting them along, loping them along, staying with that gait a little bit, you're gonna find that your horse gets better. All too often there's limited opportunities depending on where you're riding. So you may be out there on the trail and it becomes, it's like Christmas when they get to trot or lope and they celebrate a little too much. Now you can see, and this will be a common thread throughout all these videos, she's allowed to relax. I have no interest in teaching her to drop her head like that, but most of my horses will stretch out like that and relax when you don't have them up in the bridle in a frame. It, I think, shows that they're finding that relaxation and they're stretching their neck out, having been compressed a bit. Now, what we'll do now is we'll do a transition within the lope, which will basically be going from a lope to a gallop and back to a lope. Now that, at least initially, I like to do on a circle as opposed to on a diagonal or a straight line. It just lets you have a little more leeway to get to that point of coming back if your horse is a little up. Now you see how she wants to jig? If she wants to jig, I'm going to do a transition to the walk and walk her forward in the bridle, then release her. And do that a couple of times. So even though that wasn't what I set out to work on, you can never let your agenda take over from what you need to be doing. If they make a mistake, address it. Don't say, well, that wasn't what I planned on doing today. I'll walk her forward, keep her in the bridle, and now she should be ready to lop off a little more sedately, let's say. And I will share with you that her canter departures or lope departures have been a little struggle for her because she has a tendency to want to go long and low and to fall into that and maybe extend a little bit through the trot instead of stepping right off. Those things typically almost take care of themselves if you just work on collection and so on, rather than making a big deal and drilling them on the canter depart. So we're loping around here pretty relaxed, in the bridle a bit. Now let's ask her to gallop. I'll keep her in the bridle. And now we'll pick up, transition back to that shorter lope. And in time, you absolutely want to get to where you can do that on a slack rein just by relaxing your seat and maybe taking a little slack away. But for now, I really want to keep her in the bridle because I don't want her to hollow out when I slow down. So I'll cluck to her, ask her to gallop. So she's galloping in the bridle. And I'll bring her back. Now this is something that plays right into the reining horse event that I've been actively involved in most of my riding life. And typically, you'll go from a large fast circle to a small slow. I like to go from a large fast to a large slow so that my horse doesn't learn to fall in every time I slow down. But certainly, if you choose to, you should be able to burn a little faster circle on a large fast. Then steer in softly and have your horse come down to a small slow. Woo. And again, for now, I'm keeping her in the bridle, because if I throw the reins away, she will get a little too long, a little too low, and she'll tend to hollow out when I slow down. But even again, for your trail horse, if you do transitions between gaits and within gaits, you're going to soften your horse up. You're going to get them to where they are responsive to your hands, to your legs, and really it just tunes up and expands on those three basics. I always restate these almost every video. Bear with me. You want to go forward when you ask. You want your horse to soften and give to the bridle when you ask. See, and she's a little stiff there, so I'm going to address it right now. I'm going to do sort of a half halt, then a full halt. Back her off till she softens. Then we'll go up and we'll trot. That little half halt, that little check, will mean more when you've taken her the whole way through a halt and backed her up. So there, she's being more civilized. And you also want to have your horse to where they give off your leg, move off your leg. So if I ask her to step over or ask her to step in, she'll do those things. If you've got those things in place, then if you're running a circle, your horse is going to stay between your reins, and you can concentrate on the transition, not just on controlling your horse. Now, you may try these things and find that you spring a leak. That's diagnostic. Just embrace that. If you do spring a leak, if you find a bad spot, say to yourself, how do I go back upstream and find the place where it began to go wrong? Don't sit there and gallop your horse again and again and again, haul on their mouth and try to slow them down. Figure out where it went wrong. Are they not moving forward? Are they stiff in the bridle? Are they unresponsive to your leg? And notch back the degree of difficulty and maybe work on trot transitions instead of doing the higher degree of difficulty at the gallop. But it's very nice to have a horse that you can gallop out and say, enough already. It also gets into the other concept that's so important, and that's for your horse to have that on-off switch. I mean, she just galloped pretty hard, and she goes right back to dropping her head and walking around like grandma's horse. And that's what grandma and I are after. We want to be able to have this horse when we need it, and to have a dynamic horse when we need that. And I think if you work on it, you'll find that you enjoy the same type of horse yourself. So there are some thoughts on transitions within the gait. Probably a good one to watch with the transitions, our training video that preceded this, so that you get a little feel for how the transitions play into the training program. It's what I do. Different people do things different ways. There's other ways to do this, I'm sure. If you have a different, better way, shoot me a comment and tell me. Also, if you think about it, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, because we want to have you all back. Thanks, till next time.